future, I encourage you to make a gift in support of our operations. Shula Reinharz's profile is on the screen out front, so I'm not going to recount her incredible biography. I'll just say that Shula's the professor I wish I had in college for two reasons. One, I would have loved to take anything besides technical engineering classes. And the other is when you talk with Shula, you learn a little bit more about your world and a little bit more about your place in the world. Today's presentation is about her delicious book, 100 Jewish Brides. The brilliance of this book is not only the flavor of the profiles, but the ingenious organization of the book, how couples meet, how they court, how they propose, how they marry, and how they celebrate. I've always thought that buying a book as a wedding present must be a terrible idea. But trust me when I tell you that 100 Jewish Brides is a wonderful engagement or shower gift. The book colorfully describes what we have in common, but more dramatically, the rainbow of traditions, customs, meanings, smells, and tastes of the world for people who fall in love and then act on this blessing. Read it, and I guarantee you'll reflect about the upcoming weddings in your life more creatively and more meaningfully. And I'm certain you'll never attend, plan, or think about a wedding in the same way. Thank you, Shula, for joining us in this summer utopia. You come right at the end of a traumatic few days. It's been raining. And we want to thank you for sharing what we call, I guess, our matrimonial nachas on this beautiful day. So please join me in welcoming Shula.
Does this work? That's all. So I want to follow up on what Dan Mansour said, but first I have to be reorganized.
This got moved.
Yeah, it did. Sorry.
That's okay. We'll fix this. There you go.
Yeah, okay. This microphone is off. Okay. I want to just add on to what Dan said. I wish I'd had him as a student because I love the way he introduced this book, and you apparently really read it, and you summarized it so well. So I'm going to talk about 100 Jewish Brides, and I'm going to talk about it first by giving you a contrasting quote, and it is obviously not working, but that's fine. So there is a woman that you might know. Her name is Anita Diamond. Has anyone heard of her? Yes. So Anita Diamond. Off again?
Take your glasses off a second. We're going to fix this.
This is going to be a very long session.
Wow, how did that?
One, two.
Three, and through again.
I'm going to let you do it.
I'm so sorry.
You're not doing anything wrong. It's okay.
Oh, no, don't.
It's okay.
That, yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, now. How about that goes around the back?
Do people know what the bedecken is? This is what this is like. I'm getting prepared with the veil and the whole thing. Okay. So Anita Diamond is a well-known figure. Two of the great things that she has done, three. She wrote the book The Red Tent, which is wonderful. She created one of the first really modern mikvahs, and that's in Newton, Massachusetts. It's beautiful, it's respectful, it's educational, it's wonderful. And she wrote this book called The Modern Jewish Wedding Now. And in that book, she starts by saying, what is essential for making a Jewish wedding kosher? Besides the banquet, which should not have certain foods. But what makes a Jewish wedding kosher? And she said there are basically three things. One is that the bride receives from the groom a gift that is worth more than a dime. Okay? Obviously, that's not enough of a criteria to qualify. Then the groom must recite a verse of blessing to her, and it has to be witnessed by two people, that ceremony, the giving and the speaking, by two people who are not relatives of the couple. And that's it. In terms of actual legal prescriptions, there is no place in the Talmud that it says you have to smash a glass. There's no place that says you have to dance the hora till you drop. So that's all there is. So when I read that, I said, well, that might be all there is to make a Jewish wedding, but that is not what is going on around the world. And I wanted to find out what is going on. How do people around the world define what they want to have for a wedding? And so a friend of mine, Barbara Vinnick, I don't know if you can see her, she's listed first there. Again, it's not good?
It just comes loose too much.
Okay. My ears are too small. Should I use the mic?
Well, it can, but then you can't move away from it.
That's fine. I'll yell when I'm moving away. Because I'm getting tired of my ear being...
Okay, sorry.
No problem. No problem at all.
Let me steal this back then,
Okay.
so we don't get...
All right. So I am, as you might remember from yesterday, the creator of a research institute, the only one in the world that studies the intersection of Jews and gender. How does that, what is that? What are the laws? What are the changes that are being made? What are the issues that we have to deal with? And so in that, and it's funded by Hadassah, by the way, and very handsomely, because they're really very interested in this, because there's so many changes going on, right, in terms of the role of women and maybe the role of men in Jewish life. So what I said to Hadassah is, even though you are an American and an Israeli organization, with VITSO being the organization in the rest of the world, I want to study Jews as Jews, that is around the world, and not in one place. Why should we study us and say that's what Jews are? That's inappropriate. We're in a particular time, a particular place, right, with a particular, all sorts of ceremonies, etc. So I have recorded over the time contacts. I have contacts all over the world with Jewish women and have brought them in for research, conferences, writing books, etc. And Barbara is a member of the, she's not up there. Barbara is a member of an organization called Kulanu. I don't know if you know that organization, but Kulanu is a Hebrew word which means all of us. And Kulanu helps Jewish communities around the world that want to flourish, want to get started. There's one seat over here. So between her emphasis on nascent Jewish activities and communities and my interest more in established Jewish communities, we kind of covered the world. We have 6 continents except Antarctica, and who knows, what's down there. So we wanted to just try to describe how Jewish weddings, that is, weddings in which there's a Jewish bride. We didn't include weddings in which there's a Jewish groom and not a bride. So in order to study what Jewish brides think their wedding was and what's important to them, and that they could write an essay for us, which they did, which is this whole book is just full of 100 essays by these Jewish women from around the world. Places I don't think you would realize there really are Jewish communities. So we took all that material and divided it up into what Dan said was a very good organizational principle of time, which is meeting. You know, there's actually, I think, a phenomenon towards the wedding that precedes meeting, and that is the narrative. You know what a narrative is? It's the story you tell yourself about where you're going. So, for example, I'm embarrassing my husband. I had a narrative of the guy that I wanted to marry, and then he showed up. So he had no idea about my narrative. I mean, maybe he had a different one, I don't know. But we all have narratives, and the narratives can get us into trouble or can bring us happiness if we can achieve those that we want. So, but generally we say that the wedding begins with a meeting. And I want to read you from Ireland. Could we have the next slide, please? Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. You know what I'm going to ask you to do, because yesterday I got stuck and stuff. This is a very nice looking couple, right, with a fur coat and a dandy hat and cigarette, and they are a couple from Dublin. And the way they met was by the Jewish community there trying to encourage men and women to meet each other and to marry. And why do we want marriages? Because we want children. It doesn't say marriage so that we have more love in the world. It's to get more Jews in the world, I think. So the Jewish community created something called the hops in Ireland. And in the hops, the Jewish men and women would get together and they would dance. His father came from a family of cigarette makers, and she came from a family that were some other kind of manufacturer. Julie and Stanley met at the hops, and I have to say, my brother met his Beshert, his future wife, not at a hops in Ireland because he was living in Manhattan, but at a Hadassah-sponsored hiking club. And there she was hiking. And if it hadn't been for that being created, I don't know if he would have met her. So I think the Jewish community has a big role to play and doesn't always play it in making it possible, besides setting up J-Date. That's another story. But, you know, in creating opportunities for young people or older people to meet each other. So this woman, her name is Julie, said that she went to the hops and she met, or she spied and spotted a handsome, simply marvelous dancer on the floor. When he came up to ask her for a dance, she froze on the spot, even though she was there for this purpose. After dating for 3 months, Julie brought him home to meet her parents. I don't know if that's always the case nowadays. It was quite a coincidence that Stanley, who was her father, was an optician, and so was the guy that she met at the hops. And so the father and man fell in love with each other. And then he, the future groom, helped the younger children with their homework. And so he was perceived as an intellectual. I don't know how old the kids were. And then he asked Julie's parents for her hand in marriage, and they became engaged. That's one story. It has a little bit of Ireland in it. It has the hops, which was a lot of drinking and dancing. Parents got involved. They liked the fact that they had the same profession. And then I want to give you another kind of background. There was a couple who had a first date at a Starbucks. I think a Starbucks is a very good place. I'm not comparing that with other coffees, but that people could meet casually and they could get to know each other. No, we don't have the picture of the Starbucks. And they met, listen to this, they met online, then they went to the Starbucks, liked each other. They moved in with one another, because you have to pick up 3 points. J-Date, Starbucks moving in, okay? And dated for 3.5 years. Now, some people might say these are out of order, right? But that's what Jewish weddings are. They're in all kinds of order. So they, oh, here it is. They met online, etc. Then there was a proposal delivered in Sarah's backyard. The beautiful part was that everybody who was invited helped to put together the proposal, and both families joined in the celebration of the engagement. So that's a story based on family, on participation, and on doing things in the order that makes sense to you. And there's nowhere that it says really, I think the only order is that you have to be engaged before you're married. You can't be married and then engaged, because that doesn't make any sense. Okay, then what else happens before the wedding? One of the things, and could you keep on going, please? That's backwards. No problem. Oh, do I do mine? You want me to? Okay. This is of a interracial couple, and the woman on the chair is Jewish, and she is disabled. And that is a photograph which they sent us, which intends to show you how weddings can bridge differences. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is the one that I wanted to tell you about. What is in this picture? A lot. There's a female on the extreme right. That is not a wedding gown. That is a belly dancer outfit. Not something you typically see, right? And then on the left, more on the left with her hand up in the air, that's another woman with her belly dancer outfit. Now, this picture is confusing to me because it says that, could somebody read that out loud? Because I can't read it from here.
Shamala's right with her future daughter-in-law and son at their henna party. It's Iranian, and there's a man with a lot of women who are not clad. I mean, is it from the 70s?
This is from the 70s, right. But I don't know which is the bride and which is the mother. It's really hard to tell. But it doesn't matter, does it?
No, the bride's in the matching,
Oh, with the long black hair.
and the blue outfit with the white collar.
Okay, we've got a bride.
She has it too.
You know, I've got to write back to these people and say, you know, who's who in this? But this is an enormous party that took place in Marrakesh, which is in Morocco, and 500 people were invited from Casablanca. I don't know if you've been in Morocco. Casablanca is in the northwest, and Marrakesh is in the south central section, for this henna party in which all these Middle Eastern influences are present, and in which the henna was later applied to everybody.
Why does that say Iran?
It was a wedding in Iran.
Because, okay, but you're talking about Morocco.
Right, I'm sorry, they come from Iran. Very good, I'm glad you listened to this. But the wedding was of this couple who came from Iran. Maybe they came from Iran originally and then escaped into Morocco. Okay, good. Next one, please. Now, this one is for another thing that can happen before marriage, and that is conversion. So here we have, will the same person read it because you read it so well?
It was Ahava and Eli under the chuppah in Madagascar. In 2016, more than 100 men, women, and children, natives of the faraway island off the southeast coast of Africa, converted to Judaism after interviews with the Beit Din and immersion in the river Mikvah.
100 people married when a rabbi from New York agreed to go to Madagascar, which is on the east of Africa. It's a big island, famous for its lemurs, which is an animal, and and my friend Barbara Minnick went and took the picture that's on the book of all these brides standing there together with embroideries, with their own customs. So I just want to read to you what Ahava, or Ahava, however she pronounces her name. Ahava means what? Love. So that's, that's a pretty good sign. She writes, I was born in Antananarivo, the capital of Madagascar. I grew up in a Catholic family with 5 brothers and 4 sisters. My father became a gendarme, a military policeman, and was sent to another city a day away from the capital in the east. So when I was a young girl, my family moved there and stayed for 13 years in the capital. When we came back to Antananarivo in 1999, my little sister and I changed our religion and became Seventh-day Adventists. Why? Because there's a lot of Seventh-day Adventists there. Although my parents were strict Catholics, the necessary thing to do was to pray. I met my husband, Eli, at a church where he played the piano and I sang in the chorus. We were both in the university. I was studying law and he was studying marketing. He was the teacher for a group who were learning English and asked me to join. We saw each other every week and became friends, and when we started to go out in 2000, I introduced him to my parents, as I did all my friends. We were married in 2005. I have my law degree, but now that I have children, I have to wait to take the exam to become a lawyer. Eli works for the Bank of Africa and sometimes travels to other cities. In 2013, my father-in-law told us about Judaism. So she was married, he told us about the community and said it was the true way. He and my son, who was 7, went to pray with Ashrei, leader of one of the 3 congregations. I learned that there is a prayer for everything in Judaism. I asked if I could go with them to services along with my mother-in-law. We stayed outside for 5 weeks. Then we learned some Hebrew and the order of the service. I became a member of the congregation with my family, including my son and my younger daughters. At first, I never thought about formally converting. I didn't think we needed to do it. But our congregation's leader explained about conversion, the Beit Din, and the mikveh. Women do a monthly immersion at home. So we didn't feel scared or uncomfortable about the mikveh in the river. When I saw a Jewish wedding on the internet, I felt delighted and excited, but I never thought I could do it. I was so happy to be able to marry in a Jewish ceremony. I chose a blue dress with a little white for the wedding, but when we came here for the ceremony, I saw that everyone was wearing white. So I told my mother-in-law, and we walked quickly to the market and bought a white dress. You may have noticed that I was wearing blue shoes. We can't see that here. My children were surprised when they saw me in a different dress. My husband found a ring that morning, too. My husband and I thank Hashem for this ability to marry again and to be able to pray as Jews, which is a beautiful story, I think. And in Madagascar, I think we can be inspired by people who expend a lot of energy in becoming Jewish, and in that process learn what it is and don't take it for granted. So now I want to talk to you about something that's very different, and it's from Germany, not one of my favorite places. Okay, so Germany 99. I like telling you their stories in their own words, This is a woman named Miriam Harel who writes the story. Miriam, a retired plastic surgeon who sadly and unexpectedly passed away in 2021, compiled a family history for her English-speaking relatives. She shared some unusual information. There were there was a sumptuous menu, and I'm going to read you the menu of this German wedding, German Jewish wedding. And people told poems, and they were unable to immigrate in time. They were transported to Auschwitz, where they were among the more than 140,000 German Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Miriam's father did not attend this wedding. 8 months before, he had left for Palestine, where he met Miriam's mother, a refugee from Austria. So this is what happened. First of all, this wedding took place in Essen, which is kind of funny because Essen means eating, and it's about food. And so Rudolf Kaiser married Greta Buchtal. The wedding took place with all the bells and whistles in Wittenberg, a town in northern Germany on the Elbe River. In other words, a place chosen for its beauty, because everything was with bells and whistles. It is evident that, despite the gathering clouds of Nazism, the family celebrated with the usual flair befitting the occasion. And so could you do the next slide, please? This is the wedding invitation, and it's in old German font. Doesn't have a single Jewish thing on it. And it says that the first person is going to marry this Gretel, and it's going to be in Essen. And, no. Okay, and look, the date is December 25th, 1954, and the recipient is this person. That is a wedding invitation of the time. No Hebrew, no Jewish symbol. It could be the wedding of anybody, I think. So here's what they had to eat, which was apparently more important than Jewish symbols. One, and I don't even know it's... No, that's a 3. That's a 3. It's 34. Okay? Okay? I didn't realize that. It was so interesting, but it's 34, period. The first thing on the menu, and I don't know what this is, we don't have to discuss what it is, truffle cup. Then, here's a Jewish symbol, chicken soup with noodles. Then, blue stream trout with horseradish. Then, vegetable plate with tongue. Then, goose, this is a lot. Goose with Sicilian salad, I don't know what that is. Praline maraschino parfait, palm ice cream cake, mocha, and in the evening, a cold buffet. So what's important to these people? The place where it is, the opulence of the party, and not much else. And so now we're going to, and there were lots and lots of poems. And here's a poem that was written by somebody at the wedding. To its end arrives the song. It lost some of its force. The tune is nice, though a bit long. The voice is getting hoarse. To the couple, a thunderous roar for joy and luck in married chore. Bring forth the juice of vine. Let all the Buchtals live just fine. So it's a kind of, ambivalent, but it was very... How did this get saved? Because families save things. Families still say they were killed, but someone in the family kept the wedding invitation, brought it, let's say, to the United States, and then we got to know that person, and she told us about their grandchild. Save things. Save things, because it's what you leave behind that tells your story, right? And it could be in another book. So now we have, could you go to the next slide? Okay, that is another henna party. And Look how they come in from Morocco. It's beautiful. And those thrones, they call them, are on poles that are on the men carrying those things in. And look how beautiful these people are and how joyous they are. And there's a kippah in the front, and then there's fezzes, you know, the red hat, and then there's this white thing which is called a jabulia, I think. And it was Morocco Jewish style, or Jewish Moroccan style, however you want to put it. And those weddings where the Moroccan Jews have come to Israel, you know, the majority of the people in Israel are either Mizrahi or Sephardi. That means either, did you have a question? That African, North African, or Middle East. That's the majority. And Moroccan Jews did not really suffer persecution in Morocco. The Holocaust did not come to Morocco, and the king of Morocco has been good to the Jews. But the Zionists came over to Morocco in 47, 48 and said, you have to get out of here. And they brought them to Israel, which had just been formed, and they were more than 50% of the population. So there's a lot of support for weddings that have these kinds of ceremonies in Israel because there's such a large Moroccan community.
Now, one more thing about this Moroccan bride. She's not Moroccan because she does not have the henna on her hands.
Not yet.
She would,
Not yet. They are being brought into a hall, and then, does people know what henna is? It's this temporary dye, and in some Moroccan weddings, the woman has beautiful designs on the top of her hands and on her palms, and sometimes on her face or her feet, and they're all considered beautifying, and they disappear within about 2 weeks, much shorter than the wedding. Marriage, you know, that just goes away. And they also do it for the men. It depends on what you want. Sometimes it's just the bride, sometimes it's all the guests, etc. And they're going to go and do that. Right? I think Orthodox Jews, if I'm not mistaken, would disapprove of this because it's sort of like a tattoo, and tattooing and defacing, they would say, the body is not accepted. There are differences between Sephardi, Mizrahi, and Ashkenazi Jews. The German menu is definitely Ashkenazi. Okay, so let's do the next one, which I love. Oh, this is just a picture of the venue. I was talking to the two Richards who are in this room, maybe there are more, and they both have had 2 weddings. And both of them had weddings that were extreme differences in their venue. One got married lavishly in a big hall, and the second marriage was in a bar. And the first one was also kind of a real contrast. So I wanted to show the contrast. You can have a wedding anywhere. And look at the one on the left. That's on a beach, probably in the Caribbean. Where does it say? Yeah, St. Thomas. The guy, who is probably a rabbi, has a talit on. I don't know if the other guys, well, the older man there who's getting married does not have a kippah. It's a Jewish wedding. He gave her something worth more than a dime. And there were witnesses. And it's outdoors and there's no chuppah. But that does not invalidate it. It's the way they want it to be. And this one is kind of the opposite, right? It's magnificent, it's huge. It was the central synagogue of Sofia, Bulgaria. And it doesn't matter which one you're in. It depends on what you want to do. Could I have the next one? Here's the man signing the ketubah in Bermuda. That could be a song. The ketubah in Bermuda, right? Okay, let's do the next one. Now, this one I wanted to show you. This one is from Italy. Someone want to read it for us? Former reader?
Rabbi Barbara recites the family blessing for the newlyweds and their mothers.
And their mothers. There are customs in some parts of the world, Jewish and also non-Jewish, where the mothers are blessed for having brought up their children to this day. I think that is great. I think that is really wonderful, not just because, I believe in women being recognized, but it's accurate. The mothers should be thanked for developing these children. Okay, so here, the first and only woman rabbi in Italy. That's because everybody else is Orthodox, and therefore they don't have women rabbis. So her name is Rabbi Barbara, and she serves congregation Ner Tamid del Sud, the eternal light of the south, the first active synagogue in Calabria in 500 years. 500-year gap, and then it comes back. In 2017, her synagogue was recognized as a member of the Reconstructionist Jewish movement, which is so important to bring synagogues into the groups that exist. Rabbi Barbara welcomes people of all backgrounds, including Anusim. Anusim is what we would call the people who escaped the Inquisition. It means people who were forced, anosis, to force. They were forced to convert. Their ancestors were forced to, and they remember their ancestors. Somebody was asking me about the menu from a wedding in 34. I mean, that's no big deal. 500 years ago, what did they do, right? And they are rediscovering their Jewish roots. Some of the wedding traditions she and her Italian informants describe are modifications of Jewish ones that have been passed down through generations, unaware of their origin. And the community supports many Anusim, and many have gone to Latin America, but some came to Africa, and some came to Italy. An old woman in the community spoke of the tradition to make a blessing sotto la coperta, which means under the cloth. One of the women, like my great-grandmother, would spend nearly a year crocheting a beautiful bedspread, big enough for the bride and groom's double bed. But the first time anyone saw it was on the wedding day. 4 men of the family would each take a corner of this crocheted blanket and make a blessing over the heads of the couple. The 2 fathers would make a blessing in a secret language, later turned out to be Hebrew, the language of the Jews. So weddings are places where people learn about Judaism too. Today, Jewish families, particularly those in the toe of the Italian boot, continue the ancient chuppah tradition. That's continued. Beautifully hand-crocheted canopies are often passed on from generation to generation as family heirlooms. My husband and I did not receive a hand-crocheted bedspread, but I realized recently that my mother-in-law embroidered all sorts of things for me. It was all after the wedding, but it was a Rosh Hashanah tablecloth and a challah thing and this and that and the other, which is a kind of tradition of I guess, one generation to the next. For Italian Jews, tradition dictates that vines, olive branches, and ivy, rather than flowers, decorate the chuppah canopy. In addition, brides and grooms often tie a small sack of earth to each of the front poles of the chuppah. The earth comes from their respective family homes or from the village where they or their ancestors were born. This Anusim tradition celebrates the earth, which nurtures their Jewish roots, regardless of difficulty, are assumed never to die. Following the promises and ring exchange, a beautiful southern Italian tradition takes place, the rabbi said. I invite both mothers. The rabbi is the one in the middle in the back, and the 2 women are the mothers, and this is the couple. I invite both mothers to join their children under the chuppah for the family unity blessing. The tradition features a braided gold cord which both mothers use to bind the hands of their children. As the mothers place their hands over the bound hands of their children, I make a special Italian blessing that unites both families in love and support. It was a magical moment, says bride Rosemary, who stood with her groom, Lorenzo de' Medici, descendant of the famous Renaissance family, under the chuppah erected on the beach. When my Korean mother and Lorenzo's Italian mother wrapped our hands together, we understood that nothing in the world is stronger than love. You know, if I get married again, which I doubt, I want to put all these traditions in because they're so great. Okay, let's do the next one. This is a couple from, what does that say? Spain. Okay, reader.
Esther places the ring on Louis's little finger held by her mother.
Right, the finger that she's holding is still part of his hand. It's not just holding the finger. So that's the mother, and she's orchestrating this, 3 hands.
Is she trying to make sure that they really get married, so she's forcing?
I think she wants to feel that ring to see if it's, not plastic. I don't know. So this is a double ring ceremony. That's what it's called when the woman also gives the ring. And this is something that Chabad does not permit, and some Orthodox other groups don't commit because they think it is only the man who is buying the woman and therefore gives her the ring. But the woman is not buying the man. But what do we have? A world in which the role of women is changing, right? So that has changed as well. But the Chabad people, who are very nice, said that if a bride wants to give a ring to her husband, she can do so, but after the wedding. Okay, so let's do after the ceremony. Okay, this is an amazing one, I think. This is going to be the next story, but I want to give you another one. After the ceremony, a custom practiced in many Jewish communities is yichud, or going off together nearby with no one else accompanying you. The bride is away from this whole group and just goes off by itself. Our bride from Canada wrote, after breaking the glass and signing the civil marriage register, we went to a small room in the back, as tradition dictates. Everyone calls what they want to do tradition. And had a few minutes on our own to catch our breaths. When David asked the rabbi before the wedding, what should we do there? The rabbi laughed and replied, if you don't know, you shouldn't be getting married. Which I think is great. I want to meet that rabbi. Maybe he can marry me again. Okay, another lovely story comes from Zimbabwe. The wedding took place in the groom's village, where a feast was prepared. What was the feast? 2 cows and several sheep. They were slaughtered. Yehud and I saw that in a Bedouin wedding. Right before the wedding, they killed, I know. But they did that and everybody ate it. And traditional beer was brewed as well in Zimbabwe. The bridal party arrived toward noon with the bride and a group of aunts at the head of the procession. This is Lemba culture. It's like a Lemba tribe, but they have adopted Judaism. In Lemba culture, aunts are responsible for handing the girl over to her husband. So when they arrived at the edge of Tapiwa's family, Tapiwa is the man, the aunts and the veiled bride stopped. They marched in together. What do? We go down the aisle with a father, a mother, nobody, your husband, your wife. Well, they have all the aunts, A-U-N-T-S. Primrose is the name of this woman. She is the bride. she was given the customary gifts, a winnowing basket. I think that's where you go like this and stuff falls out and separate the wheat from the chaff. And a broom. I'd give that one back. After receiving the gifts, the bridal party, what do we do now for gifts? A registry. They choose all the gifts they want, and we do this transaction with another company, and we get it there, and we feel great, we got what they want. This is a little different. You get a winnowing basket and a broom. After receiving the gifts, the bridal party went into the compound amid ululation. You know what that is? Ah! You know that sound that I can't do? Dancing and a lot of celebration. They were led to the hut that was reserved for the bride and groom and the bride's attendants. When they got to the entrance of the hut, they waited again for a gift. This was a clay pot that was due to them before entering the hut. My cousin, that is the man, Tapiwa, was elegantly dressed in a new suit. He's not here. He was accompanied by two of our uncles for the unveiling ceremony. The unveiling would complete the wedding formalities, and the couple would be considered duly married under Lemba law. Then my cousin lifted Primrose's veil. After confirming that it was indeed the fiancé under the veil was torn in half. One half was given to the groom's uncle and the other to Primrose's aunt as proof that the couple were married under Lemba law, and then it was time to eat and drink. Very, very different. And she's already using her gifts. And she has an Adidas sweatshirt on. Okay, let's see the next one. I just wanted to show you, this is a picture of what Esther might have looked like from the holiday of Purim. She's an Iranian bride, an Iranian Jewish bride. Let's go next. Okay, so here, I'm going to try to make it a little briefer. And we have a couple from South Africa. And they were, apparently 80% of the Jews of South Africa are Orthodox. And she was Orthodox, and he was not. He was from, I think, Korea. And they were married, and her family, even though they were Orthodox, well, because they were Orthodox, they didn't go to their daughter's wedding. But they didn't do it with rancor. They did it with a sense of obligation, which they hoped their daughter understood. And then there was a brunch after the wedding. They came to that. So they came together. I thought that was a nice resolution. And they came to the bris, which happened about 10 months after the wedding. The intermarriage rate in South Africa is only 7%, as opposed to somewhere around 50% in this country. And then I want to tell you briefly about my parents. Is that the next slide? No, this is another slide. I'm sorry that it's out of order. This is a couple. Can you say that, please? Read that.
Ahuva's first marriage, quote, marriage, in 1935 was a fictitious one.
Right. There was a way that you could get into Palestine with your spouse before the state was founded, and between, I guess, 45 and 48. And she asked this guy, who's just someone in the same village, would you marry me? So that way I'll be able to bring you into the country as well. So they had a fake marriage, and then at the port, they said goodbye to each other, and each went off and married somebody else. And Yehuda has an uncle, who the uncle and his wife, Yehuda's aunt, did that. They were a fake marriage. They came to the port, and then they found an apartment together. So that was fine. They never broke up. Not everyone did, but some people did. Let's see the next one. That's my mother and my father in the war in 45, does it say? It doesn't say, okay. That was in Amsterdam. And my mother's veil started here and went all the way down to the ground and behind her. Sort of interesting. And I asked my parents, why did you wait until that date in order to marry? They had been in love since 35. And my mother said to me, neither of us wanted to be a widow at the end of the war. So, I mean, they would still, if God forbid one of them had been killed, they would still be like one, but they didn't want to have that status. And they had to have a civil marriage beforehand, and the Dutch, as I talked about yesterday, did everything in their power to make life difficult for them in their desire to get married. We're getting to the end, and I have one more to tell you. This person, could you go to the next one? This person, the woman on the right, with a little bit of a scowl on her face, is my cousin's daughter. Her name is Yael, and that is her husband, whose name is Tomri. Yael is one of a growing number of Israelis who are unhappy with regulations by the controlling Orthodox rabbinate concerning who can marry and in what manner. Many people are okay with that. Many people are not okay with that. We went to a wedding the last time we were in Israel where there was a Reform rabbi, and I don't think that wedding was registered. So, you know, it's very difficult because not everyone wants to be married by an Orthodox rabbi that's not your lifestyle and your beliefs. So Yael and her husband, and she was raised in an Orthodox family. He was raised in a secular family. So that alone is, you know, enough to overcome. But Yael and her husband chose to modify their ceremony in ways that satisfied Jewish law, which is halakha, which is these three things I told you about in the beginning. And they wanted at the same time to embrace their own principles. That is a very unusual path to put the two together. She mentions opposition to the idea of the purchase. Remember I said the groom purchases, kinyan it's called, of the bride. And in the couple's interpretation of Psalm 137, which is, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem, there's mention of agunot, which are women who aren't able to divorce, and she brought that, the whole issue of divorce, into the wedding ceremony as well. So I want to end by just telling you a little bit about Yael, who is marvelous. In honor of her parents, she decided not to stand on ceremony, but rather to accept the idea of being purchased. I accepted the idea of being purchased, and my parents said they would participate in the wedding. If a close family member who is a certified rabbi would give the okay. The rabbis always have to give the okay if you're going to change anything. In other words, we had an Orthodox wedding, but outside the jurisdiction of the rabbinate. She's gone on to become a consultant to brides and grooms who want to have weddings such as this. The position from which this is so important, the position from which we began shaping the ceremony was that the ritual was ours. The wedding was ours. And that we had total responsibility for and ownership of it. To get started, we broke the ceremony down into various parts, and it was clear to me that many of the changes that I wanted to carry out were possible from a legal point of view. It was possible, it's just that it wasn't done, so it was perceived as not possible. Referring to some of the changes we wanted, the rabbi with whom we consulted said, in 30 years, this will be accepted, what you're trying to do, but not yet today. I told him that in order for it to become accepted, we need to blaze the path. A rabbi did not conduct the ceremony. Remember the first three things? We never said that it has to be a rabbi. Instead, we chose my oldest brother, a significant person for us, and a brother of my partner. In hindsight, I am sorry that two men conducted our wedding. Today, I would have asked my two sisters-in-law to take part. A woman friend greeted the people, however, and then our male and female friends held up the chuppah. It was important to us that our friends take part. We did not make any changes in the traditional text of the ceremony because that's what we agreed on with my parents. But wherever it was possible, we adjusted the wedding according to our own conception. Under the chuppah, I gave a ring to my partner. I did not wear a veil because I shudder at the idea that the bride is covered. Prior to the ketubah reading, we said personal words to each other, which is not a part of the traditional wedding. Men and women pronounced the 7 blessings, not just the men. Both of us recited the Shehechianu prayer, as well as the psalm, If I Forget Thee, O Jerusalem, because the wedding was in Jerusalem. My partner broke the glass. Today, after the fact, we should have broken it together. While we studied the meaning of the breaking of the glass, we understand that this was our opportunity in the ceremony to talk about what was broken today in Israel and in the world. And therefore, they came up with a long list of things to remember what's going on. You see how radical this is. The wedding was very meaningful for us and for those who were gathered. We were married on a Friday morning opposite the walls of Jerusalem. And prior to the ceremony, we practiced meditation in a room next to the hall, and we invited all the guests to participate. The music of the wedding was all wind instruments. The guests were only the circle closest to us, our family and our friends. After the wedding, my parents, who had been opposed to it from the beginning, but changed their mind, said that our wedding was special, meaningful, and beautiful. So that is, I think, a very positive outcome. Not that there were many negative outcomes of these weddings, but it shows you that weddings are always a product of the individual will of the bridal couple, the means that the bridal couple's family has to put this on. I know people who say we can't get married because I can't afford a wedding. I do not see the connection there, because a wedding can be on the beach with one guy, you know? And so it's the individual choice, the means of the family, the culture around them, like the two people from Morocco coming in on those thrones. It's the tradition of the family as well, and it's elements of change, because Judaism is not a static religion. It is constantly changing. People coming into it with other traditions, people coming to new ideas, like my cousin's daughter in Israel, people wanting to preserve their family culture. And it's very interesting, I think, to try to imagine what the weddings of the future will be. And I hope anyone here who wants to get married will try that out, and in addition to you, your children and your grandchildren. Thank you very much.
Shula's going to be signing books out front. We'll give her a chance to get out there.